Hello and welcome to the Telltale Cake, where we tell tales about cake and we try to ignore the corpses under the floorboards. With me today is my dear friend Erin. She is a dancer, gamer, and all-around awesome nerd. Erin, how are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. I love your purple hair.
Thank you. It's due for a touch-up, but I'm still digging it. It's faded nicely.
So tell me, what are we reading and why are we reading it?
We are reading Wild Magic by Tamora Pierce today, and because it is one of the pivotal books from my childhood, it was a great way to get into fantasy. Plus, I was a horse girl. I still a little bit am. So it was a huge draw for me.
When you offered me several books that we might read for this, and I picked this one because Tamora Pierce has a special place in my heart from my childhood as well. Not this one specifically, but I read The Song of the Lioness Quartet just over and over when I was a child, minus book 2 because the library did not have that one. But I read the other 3 books a lot, and it was just the magical girl power, fight the power patriarchy that I needed as a child. So this made me happy. This magical horse girls, we'll get into it, but it made me so happy to read. I want to believe in a world like this.
One of the things that keeps me going on fantasy books today is original magic systems, because I don't feel like a whole lot of books have a wholly unique one. But when we get into what wild magic actually is, it's something I didn't appreciate at the time, but going back and rereading it, I definitely appreciate now. So that's a huge part of it too.
This was published in 1992. Again, this is from our childhood. We are millennials.
Elder millennials.
Oh, my back. My back. So, to go with this, I made what's called a magic cake. Now, why it's called a magic cake is you mix all the ingredients together and you just dump them into one pan and bake them, and it comes out as 3 different distinct layers.
That's really cool. I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, you've got kind of a sponge at the top, you've got a custard in the middle, and then a bit of a flan at the bottom. Pretty good.
Oh, that's neat. Yeah.
Now, I asked an actual chemist why this worked. Now, she, not being a chemist who specializes in baking, probably not in bacon either, but definitely not in baking. She doesn't specialize in baking, and she didn't really think about it very hard, but she said she didn't know either. So, actual scientists stumped, therefore magic.
Magic.
Magic. There's no way to know. Checkmate, atheists. Oh, that's really good. I'm also relieved. This is my second attempt at making this. The first attempt got really flat. I think because I took it out of the oven too soon, and also because the pan was too big. So I made it in a smaller pan this time, and I left it to cool. After it was done baking, I just turned the oven off and left the door open, which is a thing you do with cheesecake, and I think that worked. So I'm not the best at baking, you guys. I just like it.
I was going to say, my baking consists of a box brownie mix.
There is nothing wrong with box brownie mix.
It's so good. I have tried my hand at meringue cookies, and oof, that is rough.
That is so hard. Meringues you need a good mixer and some patience.
See, that's what I'm missing, yeah.
I finally invested in a really good hand mixer. I used to get the cheapest mixer money could buy. I spent $20 on it, and it broke after a year, and then I would repeat it the next year. After about 3 years of this, I realized it was not the best and most economical decision to do that. So I spent actual money, and it has not broken since.
It's on my list of things to get, but there are other priorities like actually getting another M2 drive, so, you know.
If you're not big into baking, there's really no point. So yes, magic. Very, very magic.
And why be big into baking when your friends can bake better than you?
I am happy to be of assistance. All right, so let's judge this by its cover. It's a girl with a bunch of horses, and I mean, okay, so it expresses the theme well, but there's something weird about the horses. I'm not sure what.
You know, it's got to be the eyes and the ears, maybe. Something in there.
Definitely the ears, especially on this black one. What are those ears? They're tiny.
They're itty. Like, honestly, I think the ears might be smaller than the eye totally.
That's weird.
Um,
They do kind of have anime eyes.
So, looking at this, I'm kind of wondering if it might be intentional. And, it could be just like this is how the artist sees horses, which is magic in its own right. But it could be that as we discuss this, the main character, Dane, she actually starts to have an impact on the animals around her, and they become more intelligent human. So maybe that's supposed to be a depiction of them having kind of absorbed some of her magic.
Do you have smaller ears than a horse?
I have smaller ears than most horses I know, but, there could be some outliers.
True. I think I also have smaller ears than most horses. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
All right, so confirmed. A human characteristic as distinct from horses is having smaller ears. This cover art was done by someone named Joyce Patti, who I'm not super familiar with. She's done some fantasy fairy art, but I'm not super familiar with her. I'll put some photos up. So, yeah, we're not mad at the cover art, but horses have weird ears. All right, so let's get into it. At the beginning, we meet one of our characters, Onua. Is that how you're okay with pronouncing it?
I'm used to, so I've also listened to the audiobook of this book a couple of times, and they pronounce it Onua, but
okay. I don't really have opinions on how to pronounce fantasy names. But
well, and that's, yeah. Choose your own adventure when it comes to fantasy names.
Unless there's a glossary in the back with a pronunciation guide, it is
fair game.
Yes, so Onua, she is getting together a shipment of ponies that she is going to take to the magical land of Tortal, which we are familiar with from other books of Tamara Pierce. But the point of these ponies is to supply mounts to the Queen's Riders, which is sort of a guerrilla military force kind of thing that they're setting up, which is nice. So while she's out at this fair getting ponies, she meets our protagonist, heroine, Dane. So let's talk about Dane. Who is she?
Dane is someone who does have a kind of stereotypical tragic backstory. Her family home was lit on fire by bandits, if I recall correctly. Mm-hmm. And she unfortunately lost all of her family, so she is orphaned. When she first meets Onua, I think she claims to be like 14 or 15, but she's actually a little bit younger than that. So she is like fresh into her teens, so a very young protagonist. But Onua senses Onua has something that is referred to as the gift, which is a type of magic, and she has more minor forms than most. So she doesn't have a whole lot of intense like spells that she can cast. But one of the things that she can do is do like a truth-seeking type of spell. So she tests Dane out when they first meet, and she realizes that while she's kind of bluffing about a couple of things, she's trustworthy. And then, of course, she's good with horses, which is the main reason that they get on so well.
Yes, she's got a knack for horses, seems to almost be talking to them. Foreshadowing. So basically, Onua hires Dane, really good employment terms. Like, we're millennials, so they've got everything but healthcare here. Maybe even healthcare, because the gift does allow healing.
Yeah. One of the characters we get to later on puts a healing spell on one of them, so it's definitely in there.
Can you clean teeth with healing spells?
I don't know if it would work on cleaning, but it could work on repairing damage for not cleaning, so...
So maybe cavities. So maybe it covers dental.
Dental, yeah, we'll go with that.
All right, we definitely have dental. So they go off on a trip to Tortal, and they get to know each other. They have a wonderful time. Dane has a dream. She dreams that she is visited by a magical badger who talks to her and leaves her a claw. And I feel like magical talking badgers are kind of overrepresented in fantasy about magical talking animals. Because you've got The Wind in the Willows, you've got Brian Jacques' Redwall books, and I've never even seen a badger. Have you seen a badger?
I don't think I have.
What does a badger look like?
Well, actually, I do believe the badger is on the cover of the book. He's right there in the bottom corner, if you can see that.
I'll zoom in.
So
in
that's
post.
that's what I imagine a badger to look like, but only because I've seen them in photos and paintings.
I don't know. I can't even tell if this badger has weird ears too or not because I have no concept of what a badger looks like.
I feel like I've seen one in like some movie. I don't know if it's
The Secret of Nim, maybe?
It is The Secret of Nim. That's it. That's
See?
exactly what I was thinking.
They're overrepresented.
But there were a lot of animals in that.
True.
Maybe
And it's terrifying.
I mean, if you think back to a lot of the movies back then and you actually like examine the themes in them, they're horrifying. Like if you think about like Ferngully and stuff like that, it's scary.
Watership Down?
Oh, don't even get me started.
We'll have to talk about Watership Down sometime.
But, yeah, okay. We'll compromise, say, medium representation of magical badgers.
Okay.
The Madge badges, if you will.
All right, so she meets Madge Badge. She gets left. Sorry, she gets left a claw from Madge Badge, and they continue on. And on their way, Onua and Dane are actually ambushed by some magical creatures that are more or less harpies. They're called Stormwings in this. It's a huge major fight. Dane and Onua win. Spoiler alert. Dane also may have accidentally brought back a bunch of birds from the dead that will definitely come back later, but it's not a big deal.
Yeah, not at all. No,
not at
totally
all.
Normal.
Don't worry about it.
By accident.
Bringing things back from the dead, normally not a good plan, but seems to be fine here.
Yeah, just gloss over that.
Gloss over it. And they do meet another bird that is wounded, and it is Dane's job to nurse this weirdo bird back to health. It doesn't act like any bird she's ever known. So it's all very mysterious. And there's clearly a secret that Onua is not telling her, but we're not left in suspense for very long. Because then we manage to get over the border into Tortal, where we meet one of my personal favorite people in fantasy, which is Alana. Sir Alana, the lioness. She is a girl who dressed up as a boy and became a knight and is super magical and like saved a kingdom and married pretty much the leader of Tortal's underworld, and now they have a happy family. Did I leave anything out?
No, that sums it up pretty well. She is a continuation of the strong female character that literally every female that we've met at this point is in this story. And they do so in a way that doesn't detract from being female or feminine in any way, shape, or form. They are just incredibly powerful women that are also very caring and supportive of each other as well. So just add another on that book.
It makes me so happy. I would call this probably a young adult novel. And why aren't my old adult novels this wonderful?
I wish. I have not yet found any that I think tick as many boxes as this one does. So
yeah, this is not Dostoevsky. No one's insane and dead yet. Sir Alana takes this weirdo bird and uses her magic to turn weirdo bird into a totally hot dreamboat mage.
God. Why don't you do that for me? Come on. Like, I deserve a dreamboat mage bird, man.
I know. I'm sorry.
You're working on that, right?
No.
Oh.
No, when I was an undergrad, after you moved out and left me, my roommates and I discussed how clearly the best way to meet men is to find men who are dying from attacks from bandits or magical creatures and nurse them back to health.
I will make note of this.
We also decided that bandits were not really common in Rome, Georgia. So we'd probably also have to dress up as bandits and do the beating up of the men first.
So we'd be raiders.
Yes, and then we do a quick change and rescue the people that we just beat up.
Okay. All right. I'll add this to my dating tactics.
It does seem like a lot of work.
Are they worth it?
That is the question. I
digress.
So anyway, she meets totally hot dreamboat mage. And we also get some explanation about the magical creatures, which is in another country that borders Tortal, Karthak. The mages there have been tampering in God's domain, like B-movie scientists. Can you do a 50s radio voice and say they were tampering in God's domain?
Am I doing this in a feminine? I can only do it in like a kind of masculine voice. Let me see.
That's the only voice for 1950s radio and B-movies.
They were tampering with what?
God's domain.
They were tampering with God's domain. That's as close as I can get to a radio voice.
I don't have one at all. So that's why I ask you to do it.
Okay.
So they were tampering in God's domain, the mages, and they brought a bunch of mythological monster creatures back that have been being a problem. This sets up our major conflict with the book, which is actually nice because it means we don't really have any conflict in between the main characters. It's all with these other people out there, which is very nice when you don't want to really deal emotionally with having to do conflict.
That makes sense. Yeah, I would say probably the greatest conflict is in Dane learning to actually use her magic, which our dreamboat mage is the one that guides her along that path.
Exactly. So it's, I think, early Star Trek, I believe I've read that Gene Roddenberry wanted to do that and only have external conflict and not have conflict between the characters. Mm-hmm. Although there is, of course, the constant repartee between Bones and Spock.
Yes. I know, wistful. Anyways.
All right, so everyone goes to Chorus, which is the capital city of Tortal, gets set up with the Queen's Riders trainees. Dane is still an employee, so she gets to tell people what to do. She is also, meanwhile, getting magic lessons from Dreamboat Sorcerer. Turns out her gift is not normal magic. It is the ability to talk to animals, which everyone kind of saw coming. And there's some things that are about this that I kind of wish were brought up, but we're just skimming over this, which is how to deal with the fact that a lot of animals do not get along with each other, even in species. So being able to work with all animals is sort of odd because you've got predators, you've got prey, you've got parasites, and mostly what we are bringing up in the story are mammals and large birds.
There are some sea creatures, though.
There are some sea creatures, though, again, mostly mammals.
Mostly. Except for that one big one.
Except for the one big one. We'll get there. So I kind of wonder about, the less cute animals, like the naked mole rats, the ugly ants that are always at war with each other.
I have a feeling. So the majority of creatures that Dane interacts with have some level of presumed intelligence. And there are certain points where she talks about using her magic, and it's more difficult to understand because she's either not familiar with them or it's they don't have like the same dialect of like mind thought. But I think that's about as much as they go into it. And of course, I don't think that, maybe if she had used an army of ants, that could have furthered the plot. But generally speaking, I think it's easier for most people to relate to mammals since they are more closely related to us. And we, personify mammals more readily than, parasites and insects, I think.
Yeah, also, this is not a horror novel.
Yes. Although that might merit its own reflection on why we associate those things with horror, and neither here nor there.
So everything's going along sweetly and swimmingly, but wait, we have an angsty flashback.
Which one? Do tell.
Angst. I feel like I should pull out a pocket watch, Full Metal Alchemist style, to set up my angst flashback.
Write a little date in it.
Remember. So Dane is having problems with her magic lesson. She's having trouble keeping herself separate and human from the other animals. And this is making her very upset about something. She doesn't want to do her magic homework. She doesn't want to tell anyone why. But finally, because she's learned the value of friendship, I love this book so much. She's learned the value of friendship and trusting her friends. So she tells her new friends, Anua and Dreamboat Sorcerer, who has an actual name. Should we stop objectifying him?
Yeah.
His actual name is Numair.
Numair.
Or Numair. But they do make sure you know how hot he is.
Yes. Anyways.
So she tells Anua and Numair the story of what after the bandits killed all of her family and burned her village down, she contacted some friendly wolves, basically started running with the wolves on all fours, forgot she was a human, got the wolves to murder all the bandits, which seems fair enough. This is not super deep morality here. We're not going into the angsty backstories of the bandits. The people at her village decide this means she's dangerous and they need to put her down and shoot her, which is, of course, a little scary. I mean, she's, again, 12, maybe 13 when this happens. This is pretty traumatic. Mm-hmm. I will say that in a world where there is magic and everyone knows there's magic, if somebody is having a mental health problem such that they're running off with wolves and thinking they're a wolf, I feel like shooting them is not necessarily a good plan A. I think you should maybe be able to get a local healer out. Granted, this is a remote village.
They go into a little bit about it, but it is, as you said, a very remote village. Small town thinking is the impression that I get from it.
Right.
So I think that's where that plot line kind of went, but definitely agree. And actually, I really like this plot line. I was reflecting on it, and of course, it didn't mean the same thing to me in my childhood, but looking back on it now, I think it gives a pretty good lesson on mental health in general because Dane refers to herself as going mad and things like that. And she hides it for a long time as she's making these new friends and everything. But she does, in fact, decide that it is safe to open up to them.
Though Madge Badge does tell her that she should.
Yeah, Madge Badge encourages her. So we get the Badger guidance along the way. So listen to Badgers, folks. But she does eventually confide in her friends, and they are able to help her with that.
Yes, Numera does some sort of magic thing that makes it all better, so she's not going to lose herself, and she feels all better. And have you read Wheel of Time?
I have seen the Prime TV show, which has amazing costumes, but no.
Well, it has that.
But no, I have not read Wheel of Time.
Oh, there's another character who has Wolf losing himself issues there. I don't think that's a major spoiler, but he has way more angst that does not get settled nearly as neatly because he did not learn to trust his friends.
It's an important thing to get along with your friends.
Exactly. See, if he just confided in his friends, trusted his friend, I think it would have been all better.
Hopefully. I don't know. I have flashbacks to Neverending Story and the morgue, whatever it was, the devil wolf thing that chased Atreyu across the world and tried to kill him constantly. So maybe trusting friends more than wolves is a solid plan.
I feel like it depends on the friend and the wolf.
Also true.
Make your best judgment.
We believe in you.
All right, so they fix this. The Queen's Riders trainees are all heading out to Pirate Swoop, which is Alana and her husband's home, and they're going to spend summer training there. It's going to be a lovely seaside retreat. On the way, they encounter more creatures escaped from the gods' domain, griffins. They think they're going to have to fight, but Dane uses her magic to talk to them and convince them that everything's going to be okay and they can all coexist peacefully.
Which is a pretty cool way to go about it. A lot of times in fantasy novels, everything is solved by direct conflict, fighting, things like that. So it's kind of cool to get to see somebody actually use magic to compromise, have a conversation, and actually resolve things in I don't want to say a more mature fashion necessarily, but definitely a less violent one.
You know, the power of talking about your problems and compromising. And sometimes you learn to make new friends with people you thought were enemies.
And if we want to go back onto like the whole feminism route,
Which we do.
I think that it's a good highlight to show because lots of times having conversational or quote unquote soft skills is looked down upon. I actually got to meet a woman at one of the women in technology meetups who said that they do not call them soft skills. They call them power skills. And I approve of this. So it does do a good job of showing in this book that being able to compromise, listen, understand can be a way to solve a problem. And frankly, I think is a much better way than fighting most of the time. But it does a good job of showcasing that this is a strength that our main character has.
I love that. They get to Pirate Swoop. It's a lovely place. Dane gets to meet Alana's children and also the children of the king and queen. They're very adorable.
The queen is also a very kind and powerful and amazing woman.
Everyone here is great. It's very woke feudalism.
Yeah. Even the queen herself says that she prefers to be more casual and is only queen when she cannot avoid it.
We get some side stories about Dane learning to talk to sea creatures. She loves listening to whales. There's dolphins. I think there's sea lions that she likes to play with. So yeah, she meets lots of new creatures. None of the really weird ones yet. She's not talking to those weird deep sea anglerfish things.
I think that conversation would be fascinating, though.
I agree. I would love that story. Or even just some random bottom feeder invertebrates. I have started on an aquarium quest, and I'd love to talk to my freshwater shrimp. I'm not sure what they have to say other than, yo, I'm a shrimp.
I'm curious what their opinion about carapaces is. Are they pro-carapace?
Or do they long for a backbone? I don't know. They do have to molt, which the fish don't.
Can you have an opinion if you're spineless?
I think you just can't hold it very strongly.
Okay. But anyway, sea creatures.
Sea creatures. Things are going well, but then there's news of some ogre raids at a nearby village. And the lord of that nearby village is not a woke feudal lord. Not at all.
Alas.
So he does not allow peasants to have weapons because they might try to overthrow him.
I have nothing to say about that.
So not woke feudalism. And it's a reminder that, feudalism is still feudalism, even when it's very woke. And you're kind of just relying on the people at the top to be good people and not dealing with the fact that there's people at the top and people on the bottom.
Not that we would know anything about that.
No. We have health care.
We have health care.
I mean, as long as we don't have too bad health problems.
Anyways, so...
We can pay our rent. We're rich.
So Alana goes off to save this guy's butt because he can't handle these ogres himself, right?
Because women have to go save men's problems.
Naturally. So she leaves... I think, does Thiet, the queen, go with her?
I think Thiet stays.
Okay. I can't remember how that worked out. But a majority of the Queen's riders leave Pirate Swoop to go and handle this ogre situation.
Turns out it was a distraction and there's an ambush.
Gasp.
The Karthak is attacking with all its mages. So there's a bunch of ships out in the harbor. There's blockades. Pirate Swoop is under siege. Numair is having to spend all his dreaminess and his power in trying to keep everybody alive.
If I recall correctly, too, the mages themselves, the Carthakian mages, the opponents, they casted a magic suppressing spell. So the way that Numair is helping keep people alive is he's using his magic to attempt to keep the barrier off of the actual healers of Pirate Swoop so they can do their job. So he's really in a management position.
He is. Management can be important, depending.
It's exhausting. Which is shown by Numair.
He spends most of his time collapsing and being exhausted.
He swoons a lot.
He's a very swoony person. It's a very role reversal.
It really is. I hadn't really considered that, but it's very true.
I mean, he's been rescued while a bird in distress. He's swooning all the time.
Always having the ladies look after him. He's got it down. I think he's got a good life.
He kind of reminds me a little bit of Hal from Hal's Moving Castle.
That's a great... Yep. I agree.
He doesn't start melting when his shampoo is wrong yet.
Yeah, but he is very vain about his hair.
I can imagine him melting if his shampoo was wrong.
Yes. And then I'm sure, Dane would have to come and fix it, or I don't know what.
Fix his hair, at least.
They spend a portion earlier in the book talking about hair ties. So, it's an important thing.
A good hair tie is very important, though. My hair ties always get too stretched out.
Or as soon as you find a good one that you really like, it disappears.
I think that they're sentient and that they know if you're happy and they just want you to leave you to suffer.
I think it's partially that, and partially the sock gnomes branch out every now and then, and they go for hair ties too. That's their little bonus.
I almost never wear socks, so I think my sock gnomes just have nothing to do.
Oh, okay. So we have to make sure we keep them entertained. Elsewise, that's what
they need enrichment.
We should look at the ratio of hair tie loss versus sock loss and see if they are, opposite or not.
Meanwhile, I always have too many clothes hangers.
I have the opposite problem. I never have enough. I wonder if they teleport between closets. Maybe we all have Narnia closets for hangers.
But interconnected Narnia closets.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So more like the vanishing cabinets in Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Back to the massive battle. Yes, massive battle is going on. Dane is exhausted because she is trying to keep all the animals in the area from attacking, which is, again, kind of an interesting way for animals to behave, because generally if humans invade, animals just kind of leave.
It shows how they are really attached to Dane. They very much feel like she is one of their pack, herd, flock, etc. And so the animals are very much wanting to help in the defense of Pirate Swoop, but Dane is exhibiting her will on them. And I think this is another one of those good emotional lessons where you can care about your friends and everything, but ultimately, you need to let them have their own free will and agency, and it's probably not such a good idea to attempt to force them to do things that they do or do not want to do.
And Dane learns this. We learn the value of respecting other people's autonomy.
Yay, autonomy!
We like autonomy. We don't really have autonomy these days. I'm sorry, eat more cake.
Okay.
But she does try to talk to the animals about a smart way to attack. Don't just, fly off the handle if you're a bird. Fly into people's faces. Go pee on their supplies. Yeah, she really works with especially the rodents, I think, to make sure that they go and get all of the different food items and everything, spoil all that. I think she gets their enemies' horses to leave them and stuff. And is it at this point that they start receiving refugees as well? I think so.
So one of the things that she does is she tries to help the other animals that are coming in that are refugees understand that they are trying to get them to move in the middle of the night to protect them. And so all of the animals are far more compliant than they normally would be.
This would also be a good time to be talking to ants, in my opinion, because if rats are useful in destroying supplies, think about ants.
I hate ants.
Me too.
I recently had to deal with some ants who were going after my ice cream, and it was a very sad thing. But
did you kill them all?
They are dead.
Well done.
They are murdered.
You have not learned the value of power skills and compromise.
I have not learned how to compromise with ants. I am working on it, but until then, bleach will suffice.
Karthak mages call forth a dragon. out of God's domain. They're still tampering in God's domain. But using her power skills, I love that now. They're not soft skills, they're power skills. Using their power skills, Dane manages to get the dragon to not attack and just go off into the cliff.
Mm-hmm.
But even with all this, things are still not looking great for Chortal and Pirate Swoop. So Dane decides to try to find somebody to help, anyone among her animal friends. So she casts her will out, really far out to the Copper Isles, which are somewhere on a map. Is there a map? There might be a map. I'll maybe find it later. There is a map. Yes, there is a map, which I will scan, so it's not just that. So the Copper Isles are a little archipelago thing off the coast of Tortal. She casts her will out there, and she finds...
Well, originally, she finds some whales before the big guy. And she actually tries to convince them to tip over the boats. Whales, we learn in this book, are pacifists. And they tell her no, which she's not used to having animals tell her no, which is another thing you should learn to respect the no.
You should definitely learn to respect no, and also maybe be glad you haven't found Moby Dick here.
Yeah, yes. But as she is talking to these whales, she hears like this weird voice, this weird deep resonance, right? And she's not sure how to interact with it, and it is mysterious, it is spooky, and it feels kind of ominous to her. And I think she doesn't actually ask it for help. She's like, "No, we're good, it's fine." And he's like, "But I heard you talking to the whales. Sounds like you have a problem." And she's like, "No, we're okay."
And the voice is like, "I can flip over any ships you want."
Mm-hmm. So we don't hear about it for a little while. We go back to Pirate Swoop and ongoing shenanigans there.
Again, the Copper Isles are some ways out. I don't actually know scale, but it's not the closest.
It's quite far away. And I think it was Numair asks her later on, were you able to find anybody to help with these boats and stuff, or ships really? And she was like, "No, I tried the whales." She's like, "There may be someone coming, but I don't know if they're going to make it in time. It was really far away."
But a couple things happen. First of all, a terrifying kraken rises from the depths.
Wait, that's it. Sure, we'll go with They have beaks, right?
Please make that noise again. All right, so that is the official noise of the kraken. The kraken has been released with a and he pulls down all the Carthakian boats. The dragon enters the fray again and actually gets killed by the Carthakian mages.
Mm-hmm.
It's very sad.
Dane tells her, she's like, "No, it's not worth it." But for some reason, the dragon is very mad at these mages. I mean, it's one thing to be, pulled out of your day to get into another dimension. And I think the Carthakians had told the dragon that it was Pirate Swoop's fault that she was here, and that's why she was attacking them initially. But Dane, after using her power skills, explains to the dragon that, no, we didn't bring you here. In fact, it was the Carthakians that did. And even, outside of the disruption of daily life, the dragon seems more upset than normal because she is sacrificing her life, basically, to take out as many of these boats and sorcerers on the boats as possible. And we find out a little later why. So,
yeah, the Carthakians have been defeated. And I'm sure the kraken will never be a problem in any of the subsequent books.
Of course not. All of the higher-ups, so the Queen Thiot and I think Numair and Alana have a chat with the kraken because they're concerned because...
it's a kraken.
It's a kraken in the bay right next to their home. And they don't really go in depth into it, but they convince it to go away. They threaten it or something, which I'm not so sure why a kraken would listen to the threat of humans, but it does go away for now.
I'm sure it will all be fine. This is only book 1.
But before the dragon passes away, she gives a mental image to Dane about a place. And after Dane goes to chill out with the swooned new mayor, because of course he's swooned again, she remembers.
I assume that he's on a fainting couch with a robe draped artfully over it.
Yeah, and he's probably, like just dramatically sprawled across it.
Almost certainly.
But she does recall this, and she's insistent that they need to go find where this place is.
And they do, and they find a baby dragon. Turns out Dane had actually healed the dragon fetus because it got damaged in utero while coming over from the other dimension, which is kind of interesting. And for a couple of things, mostly dragons give live birth. Aren't they reptiles in most mythology? I mean, I realize you can be exceptions like the platypus, but it's dragons giving live birth is not...
Yeah,
that does not fit with my understanding of fantasy.
Yeah, you usually see them depicted as having like a clutch of eggs or something similar to a reptile or...
Yeah, having learned a lot about dragon sex from Anne McCaffrey, I deeply believe that dragons lay eggs.
Maybe this is a subspecies of dragon? Question mark. I think we're going again with the mammal route to make it more relatable to people. Which honestly, I'm okay with this take because I feel like Pierce really does a good job of going through different like human emotions and everything. So it's okay to subvert kind of the standard expectations here and give. Because, again, this is a young adult novel, so she's trying to make it, I think, more accessible to readers. And I think it's more easily relatable if it's more mammalian.
I can see that. Anyway, the upshot of this is that Dane now has a baby dragon that she has to raise because the mother is dead. Which seems like a lot of responsibility for a 15 or 16-year-old or however old she is.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
Especially one who was recently traumatized and is starting over in an entirely new country.
But at least she's got friends to help her along the way.
Yes, she does. I'm sure nothing bad will happen. She will definitely not struggle to be a mother. The Kraken will not be a problem. Yeah, so we end in this nice place where she's got a very cute baby and she's got lots of friends and she's getting magic lessons from a dreamboat, and yeah, that's where we stop on book one.
All in all, it's great in and of itself. Obviously, it is a series. I think there's 3 or 4 books in this series.
I only actually read the first one.
I at some point I read the other ones too, so I do actually know a little bit of what happens.
And you can assure us that the Kraken is not a problem, ever.
I can neither confirm nor deny this. But yeah, it's a very solid book. It doesn't really have too much of a cliffhanger ending, but there's plenty of material for them to go into in the continuation of the series.
It made me happy, and it made me believe in the power of friendship.
Friendship is magic! Yay!
It is time for us to rate this book on my sugar system.
Oh, okay. Explain the sugar system to me.
So we'll start with S. It stands for sexiness. So we're going to figure out, how many bodices do we think are ripped here?
Is this out of 5?
I haven't really... Numbers don't really mean anything. The points mean nothing.
The points don't matter. I would say this is definitely an elegant corset bodice because you've got a lot of very strong female figures that never bring each other down. There's actually only, if I remember correctly, only one like mildly negative female character, and she's gone like instantly. And she had said something kind of mean. It's one of Dane's friends, and Dane cheered our friend up right away. So, and then we've got Dreamboat Mage, who teaches other people magic and cares about people and takes care of them. So I'd say very sexy. Yeah.
Yeah, Dane is about 12 or 13, so it's still kind of innocent, but there is this super hot mage who probably does the Colin Firth rising out of the sea with a wet shirt on. At least once.
I can imagine that. I would, if I were Dane, I would definitely have a crush on him. Tamora Pierce does actually mention that he's in like his late 20s, so not an age-appropriate romance, but
Not at all.
But you could definitely see Dane having a crush on him or something.
You can see an innocent 13-year-old crush on
Yeah,
him.
exactly. So, and then,
Especially because age-appropriate men at 13 tend to be annoying.
yeah.
No one likes 13-year-old boys.
No one likes 13-year-old boys. No. I don't think 13-year-old boys like 13-year-old boys. All right, what's the U?
U is uniqueness, which I'm going to give this a pretty low score, and I need a unit for uniqueness. I don't have it yet. It reminds me a lot of other similar, young girl tragic backstory learns magic, notably Mercedes Lackey in the Arrows of the Queen trilogy. I don't know if you've read that.
Never read that one. Mm-mm.
You should. It's very nice. Mercedes Lackey has this excellent ability to write about daily life in Magic Herald School.
Okay.
So it's
So
just,
kind of like Hogwarts,
but better.
but better. Okay.
And with more depth of morality. Though I realize that's kind of a low bar with Harry Potter. Yeah. So I feel like I read a lot of books like this growing up, and I'm not mad to read another one.
I would say it's very enjoyable. I do think that the tragic backstory is, a very stereotypical thing. I will reiterate, though, that I do think that the magic system itself is pretty unique. The gift that most people have is kind of standard magic-ish, but how they describe the wild magic and like the way that they describe that it appears and how it really draws on your energy and like life power, I think is pretty unique. So I think story-wise, maybe less unique. I do think that it's more unique in that the majority of the main characters are all very, very positive and supportive, and I feel like that's lacking in most books. So I would say that's pretty unique. And I do like the magic system very much. So I would say overall medium uniqueness.
And I do think the Badger drags it down a little bit because, again, overrepresentation of magical badgers.
We do learn more about the Badger later on in the series and how that he actually has a relationship. But that's for another day.
Right. And I'm not mad that it's not the most unique thing I've ever read. It's, the Japanese can write 10,000 poems comparing cherry blossoms to falling snow, and I will read all of them. I will be happy.
It's almost a comfort thing because it has a sort of familiarity to it. So it's easy to kind of sink into.
And it's such a comfort read, too. It made me so happy reading. I want to believe in this world, and especially because there's little touches like, oh, everybody is from all different backgrounds here in Tortall, and we all just get along. And
they do say that Tortall is kind of unique in that because they do mention people of other races, but it's a very normal thing there. And I really appreciate that blend of people there. But she does point out that that is kind of a unique thing to Tortall. So we know that still exists in the world, but that's not what we're focused on.
It is not. So maybe not the most unique. Think of a unit, maybe, at some point. Okay. We'll get there. G is for gender. So we kind of touched on this about all the strong female characters. And there's a somewhat inverted damsel in distress trope with Numair. Dreamboat sorcerer. I also wanted to mention... we did mention that Dane comes from a small town. There is a very brief scene where she talks about how she doesn't like wearing skirts, but the priests at her village always said that women had to wear skirts. Mm-hmm. And she was very happy to wear pants.
Yeah, she is in a skirt from the beginning of the book until they get to the capital of Tortall, where she decides that she is going to continue working for Onua and helping the writers. And in that, she gets introduced to somebody who ends up making men's clothes for her. And she's thrilled about it. And she's a little concerned at first. She's like, oh, what will people think of me? And then she realizes that everybody around here is kind of doing whatever is working for them and that she's most likely going to be accepted for it. So I will say that especially this is an older book. It doesn't have a lot of what is more diverse in gender identity nowadays. But I think especially for the time that it was written, it does a pretty good job of kind of addressing some of those issues. Although outside of that, I don't think that it goes too much more in depth as far as like diversity and gender identity.
One of the things that makes it such a comfort read for me is in Pierce's world, you'll have these sexist issues, and then one person will overcome them once, and it's all fine. Mm-hmm. Which, of course, is not really how that works, but I wish it were. So Sir Alana of Tortal has broken the glass ceiling, become a knight. Now it's all fine. You have these like kind of equal opportunities for men and women.
They do mention that the I think it's whatever their like standard military forces does not allow women, but the Queen's Riders specifically do allow women.
Yes.
So you still have like kind of a vein of that in there. But generally speaking, and especially for the main characters, that's not an issue anymore.
Right. And of course, Sir Alana doesn't have to be a like strong, buff, armored woman all the time. When she's at home, she wears dresses and earrings.
She's pretty.
She is. She likes to get pretty when she's at home. It's very sweet.
And it's really cool to getting to see her interact with her children as well as her husband interact with the children, because they both have a very loving, caring, and distributed care, childcare, which is also really reinforcing to see. And I think Thaya and her husband as well have a very similar balanced relationship.
Women can have it all here.
It's kind of great, yeah.
Yes, and healthcare.
And healthcare.
All right, so A is for axiness. Franz Kafka says that a book should be an axe to break the frozen sea inside us. How much do you think this broke the frozen sea inside you emotionally, or made you think about things differently?
I would say definitely as a child. It was one of those things that opened my eyes to, and I have a very easy time of suspension of disbelief. So especially as a kid, I was like, maybe I don't necessarily believe in actual magic, but like, what if I could be like this too? So it was very encouraging to me as a child to read this, because I was like, I could be like these great women. And even Dane at one point is saying, well, if the lioness can do that, if Onua can do that, Sarge, who is a freed slave, if he can be this, then maybe I can too. And I definitely felt that as a child. From an adult perspective, I'm far more bitter and jaded now, so it takes quite a lot. But I will say, especially having read this in my childhood, that it kind of brings me back to that belief system. And I feel like it's a relatively believable dynamic in the book, all of these authentic friendships and everything. So it gives me hope, and I enjoy reading about it. But as far as like how axiness it is to me nowadays, it might be a little bit less, just because the main character is much younger, so it's hard for me to relate directly to her. But it still gives me some hope and a lot of nostalgia.
What it does for me is it makes me happy and see this world where there's not real problems that we see in the world. I mean, yes, there's problems with those other feudalists over there or this other nation over there. But in the world that the characters live and interact with, everything is fine and will be solved by talking about your problems. And it's just so sweet. Mm-hmm. It made me really happy. And of course, the world being what it is, like I don't become happy thinking about the world outside right now. Mm-hmm. But this makes me happy. And it's also, I feel like I've been reading too much terrible dystopia. Like, I don't know if you've read Octavia Butler. It's bleak.
No. No, I've had to deliberately avoid that because I feel like the world is incredibly bleak right now, and so I need to go towards the more realistic but definitely happy skewed things right now to keep myself sane.
I think it might have melted a little bit of my frozen-y. I don't know that it axed it.
Yeah, I would say like there's a slight defrost, perhaps.
Defrost, yeah, I
yeah.
like that. It was on defrost. All right. Finally, we have readability.
I would say that this book is it's definitely written for young adult. So it is not a complex read at all. It is one of those I forget the name of like the American philosophy of like removing the barrier of like reader accessibility into a story, but it's definitely whatever that is. There's not a whole lot of complex description or anything that makes it more difficult to understand or wordiness or anything like that. So I would say it's very, very readable.
It's a very fast read for me. It's also only, I mean, this paperback edition is about 300 pages, and it's not that long. It's not very small type. So just logistically, it's fast. Emotionally, there's nothing that's really going to challenge me emotionally. Like, I think you're a Brandon Sanderson fan, right?
To some of his stuff, not like Way of Kings Sanderson.
Okay.
But yes.
But yeah, with, say, the Mistborn series, there's periods of I don't want to read it because I know something bad will happen to the characters, and
Yeah.
I can't handle that right now. But nothing really bad will happen. Everybody has just impenetrable plot armor.
Yeah,
And
it's kind of great.
Yeah, I need some impenetrable plot armor.
Carapace. Plot carapace?
Plot carapace.
Yeah, okay.
I wish my shrimp had plot carapaces, because sometimes they just die. Because sometimes shrimp just die for no reason. They do not have plot carapaces.
That's really sad.
It is.
We should figure out how to give them plot carapaces.
I'll work on it.
You just have to write them all stories. And then that way,
They'll have plot carapaces.
they'll have plot carapaces.
In the story, even if they die in real life. They'll have story
They'll
plot
live on in our hearts.
with plot carapaces. How did the magic cake go with us?
I think it went pretty well. I'm quite confounded by the layer thing. I'm assuming it has to do with chemistry words. The density, not viscosity.
Specific gravity?
Yeah, we'll go with that. Sure. But it tastes really good too. So I am a huge fan of that.
Good. The only thing I can think of is there's a lot of whipped egg whites in here, and they have a lot of air, so they would rise to the top. Because chemistry words.
Because chemistry words, yeah.
Yes. And then there's a lot of milk and eggs and flour, and the egg yolks are separated out. And of course, yolk and milk and flour, that's what makes custard.
Mm-hmm.
And it's cooked at a fairly low temperature for a longer period of time than a lot of cake. So I think that's where the custard comes from. And I think the sponge is largely the egg whites. I don't understand what's at the bottom. Maybe that's the butter. And this is also a very, very liquid dough, or batter, rather.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it might just have more of a chance to separate out with the long bake.
Yeah.
But I'm not totally sure how it works. But it's cool. And this is my second attempt. And even though the first attempt was not as pretty, it was still 3 distinct layers.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not hard.
I could see them eating this at Pirate Swoop.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's also kind of light to eat.
It's
not heavy.
It is not. And it's kind of surprising because especially with like the bottom layer being thicker, you would think that it would feel kind of like more dense to eat, but it doesn't. And I guess that's just balanced out by the light fluffiness above it.
Yeah, it's kind of like the book. There's not a lot of density there,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not mad at it.
Yeah, you just enjoy it and feel kind of good while you eat it.
Which is what we want from cake.
Mm-hmm.
So, Erin, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Is there anything you would like to exhort our readers to do or read or to donate to?
I would say take care of your own mental health. Find good friends that you can trust to talk to. And read more books because we're not reading enough nowadays.
Yes, and I would say like and subscribe. We can't be your friends in real life, but I don't know where I was going with that.
We'll be your friends in spirit.
We'll be your fake friends in fake virtual space.
That works.